definitely the library for that. And so I've written a demo cue here, and I'd just like to take a listen to that, and then we could get into actually dissecting and seeing how we use the library. So here's the demo piece that I wrote using Soaring strings. So there is the demo track that I wrote. So obviously I wrote it in a very sort of specific style. And of course this library can be used for a multitude of styles, and it can be used very, very well. I'd say this library, this isn't sort of your all-around string library, because you know you have certain libraries like for example Cine strings or Berlin strings, which are sort of your overall string libraries that you can use in pretty much any case, in any instance, any type of genre, and any stylistic approach to composing. But with this library in specific, it's a very sort of specific style. So this is sort of like an add-on, if you think of it like as a spice. It sort of just adds that additional thing to your music, and you can really just tell just by listening to it. So one of the obvious things that you could tell is the amount of vibrato in the strings, and the amount of expressiveness in the strings, and that that all was sort of that was before I even did any major audio manipulation at all. So like as you play the strings, it's pre-recorded with that specific articulation, so it doesn't even require a lot of sort of post-production work too. So for example, the strings are first of all, here's the interface. I'll unfreeze this stuff, even though it won't be good for my CPU because OBS eats all the CPU. Okay, so here is the interface. Incredibly simple. It has sort of like a niente thing here, so if you put it on, then it will actually die down to silence. It'll die down to silence. And then this, I believe this is like a round robin, something like that. So here is like the legato. So you can tell it's very sort of expressive in how it is recorded. Here's the violas. Let me go and turn that up. So you can see it's incredibly expressive, and that's without any major work. Because like in a regular string patch, you'd sort of have to go in afterwards, and you'd have to adjust the expression, and you'd have to adjust all different types of things to get the sound that you wanted out of those strings. Because when it comes to sample libraries, generally they are incredibly versatile in terms of the type of sounds that you can get out of them, but it takes an extensive amount of work to be able to get the realism that you want. So humans by instinct are generally lazy, so we like to do the least amount of work to get to where we want. And this is generally a pretty good library for you because it doesn't really require tons of post-production work. So I don't know why that's called general mode, but this is the cello. So I'll go ahead and play the cello. And by the way, I'm only using like QL spaces reverb on this one, and this is pretty much the big hall epic reverb. So here is the cellos from Soaring Strings. So yeah, there's the cello. And just to sort of compare it to another library, let me go ahead and grab this cello from Cinematic Studio Strings. And here's the cello from Cinematic Studio Strings. Oops, well that's on a staccato articulation. That won't do well for legato. Here that is. So there is that, and then we can go back to the cello from Soaring Strings here. And that's the one thing about Soaring Strings. It actually allows for quite fast playing. I wouldn't necessarily say, fast enough for string runs. I mean, you generally could. Like if you take the violin patch, for example, if you do something like... And then you can do stuff like... And the best thing to do with a library like this is obviously to record in separate voices. So when I studied, for example, Baroque music, you really learn how to write in separate voices. So for example, let's go to a piano here, just play an outer chord progression. Let's say we wanted to go from the chords C minor to F minor to G to C minor to G sharp major to B flat major. So we're gonna go. So to orchestrate that, we're going to want to find the inversions that go best. So we're going to go from first regular inversion of the C minor to the second inversion of F minor, and then the second inversion of G major, and then to, of course, to the first inversion of C minor. So you're using the inversion sort of to get to the chord that you want to go to easiest. So with a library like this, you sort of want to pay attention to voice leading, because of course, like, let's just say you want to orchestrate a chord progression like this. If you sort of plan out the chords like this, it's not as sort of creamy and smooth if you were to do it like this. Because of course you are using common notes. So for example, C minor, you have the C, and then you of course have the D sharp, and then if you were to go to that G sharp major chord, then you're pretty much using those two common notes, and all you're changing is one note. And especially when using strings, so for example, if we were to just go here, and I'll show you that in context of this piece. So let's just say we pull up a string patch here, or we pull up Soaring Strings. So there we just have one C. And then if we wanted to, if we were going to go C, then we're going to go G sharp major. Then we would go to the viola, right? And then we would, you know, it's going to sound much better if you use separate voices. So then you'd get like... And then if you were to go to the violins, and then you have... You know, it's so much more realistic than if you were to just use some regular, like, sort of string ensemble patch. But, of course, with this piece in specific, this piece that I demoed soaring strings on, I didn't want to strictly use soaring strings, because that's one thing that I've sort of seen when a lot of people do demos for sample libraries, is that they'll generally stick to one library, and then that's all they're going to sort of use. So if someone's doing, like, if someone's doing, for example, a library demo of Metropolis Arc by Orchestral Tools, generally a lot of the times I've seen them just use Metropolis Arc. But for me, that's not how I work. I work using multiple different libraries, and that's what sort of creates my overall workflow. So I would definitely say I like to incorporate in demos multiple different styles of that specific library. So this is a string library. So of course in this demo I have Cinematic Studio strings, and I have, you know, the Albion 1 octave legatos. So just to listen back to this piece again, since we have more people here, and I hope it won't lag behind, because beforehand I had it on freeze, but now I don't. So hopefully it'll be all right. So yeah, so like I said, on that piece, I used the Spitfire 1 legato, so that's an octave string legato to sort of punctuate the main string line, which of course as it gets into the song, when it modulates to the key of D, it's a... And to sort of pull up a string patch here to sort of show you the harmony here. So the harmony that we were going for is we were trying to go for sort of like a very romantic sort of Elgar, what the frick? Like a sort of British Elgar type feel. So, you know... And then we sort of went for that sort of smart harmony here. Then we go to the F sharp diminished, to the G. And then we had I believe it was... Yeah. Oh no, it was actually E diminished to the G major. And then to the next key that we had there. So as you can see, the chords all go into each other, and the modulation really helped intensify that. But anyways, so just sort of solo out the Soaring Strings library to see how that works. Here we go. So you can see that little passage there. All of these strings were sort of working in a very sort of unified way. So not only were they working harmonically, but they were also working in terms of voice leading and in terms of and one thing in terms of inversions, because one thing that I've really seen, especially in this type of music where it's sort of very romantic and soaring, is that using inversions and then waiting for the moment where you actually use the main chord really helps intensify the emotion of when those chords are used and when they come in. So for example, sorry. But anyways, if you have, let's just say, for example, let's say we have D, G, so we had that, of course. And so if you wait for the right time to use the actual main chords and you just use the inversions until then, it makes it much, much better. So of course, if you... So we still haven't used the main chord, and then we go. It really intensifies that. Can we request songs? This is not a DJ channel. This is a sample library review. Yeah. Oh, that was not Soaring Strings. But anyways, when it comes to Soaring Strings, let me just go ahead and yeah, that was Spitfire Albion 1 ensemble patch. But here's Soaring Strings by itself. So in this piece, the whole idea was to build, and I feel like in this library in specific, I was saying this earlier, but since we have more people, I'll sort of explain myself in further detail. So pretty much when we have a specific library, generally we have it to achieve a specific type of sound. So for example, I'm not going to go my whole career simply using cine strings, because that has a specific sound, and I'm not always trying to get that specific sound. I might want a different type of sound, so I might use Metropolis Arc for low strings, and I might use Cinematic Studio strings for my high strings, or I might even use a library simply for its if a library has violas, I might use a library just for that viola. So with Soaring Strings, it is really a sort of additional library, and so I would not say that this is a for example, if someone were to come up to me and say, I don't have any string libraries, what would be your recommendation? I wouldn't say Soaring Strings, because I love Soaring Strings. It's unbelievable, as you guys heard. It's very, very nice, and it has that awesome tone. But when it comes to an overall string library, of course, you want all the different articulations, first of all, and this has one articulation. But of course, that's what the library is for. It's supposed to be soaring. If I play the violin again, here it is. So you can see it could play very fast, and probably could even play string runs. Let's see if we can do that. Wow, you sort of can. Yeah, it sort of gets a little. And you can't really do the string runs on any other library. And get that really nice legato sound. But anyways, yeah, so that's Soaring Strings. It's a generally very specific library, and it has one sort of specific sound. So if that's a sound that you're going for, that sort of John Williams-y type sound for your compositions, or of course it could just be sort of a something to go in your higher register of strings, or something that can add that sort of that tone of the instruments, because this articulation really pronounces the tone of the instrument. So if you want something like that, I think that Soaring Strings is an excellent tool for your palette. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this track one more time, and I will talk to you guys later. So here is Soaring Strings once again. Thank you guys for coming.